And you get that history. We were slaves, we were freed, and then there's 100 years of nothing. It's like the board came and took us, right?
Yep.
And they brought us back to the earth, rioting in Watts in 1965. So you got this whole century
Yep.
where it was, all this hope after Reconstruction. And then Reconstruction is gutted in 1876. And we're dealing with 1876 to 1919, the summer of, the Red Summer. And all of this history, and nobody is doing anything with it.
Yep.
So I put it in a romance novel.
Yep.
And I'm teaching, and they're teaching their kids, and they're learning, and I'm learning. It's a good life, y'all. It's a good life. Because when you educate a woman, you educate a race.
Yep.
And brothers are reading my stuff too because they love the Westerns. You know, I'm honoring all those black men who have served this country since before this country became a country. It was black men fighting in the French and Indian Wars before 1776.
Yep.
Nobody's paying tribute to them.
Yep.
Yes.
So I'm trying to give folks their flowers, brothers in particular, because y'all not respected, you're not honored, and probably in romance, it's one of the few genres where black men are held on a pedestal, and I ain't mad about it. So I'm gonna shut up now.
Listen, I can listen to you talk for the rest of the panel. So you.
No, don't tell me that because we'll be here till Tuesday. We'll be here till Tuesday.
For me, I'll give examples. In my story in Black Boy Joy, we have Gary the Griot in the Griot of Grover Street. Griots being to call them bards, to call them historians, to call them poets and musicians is to do them a disservice because they are all of that and more. Mm-hmm. Same thing in Last Gate of the Emperor, which like Milton was explaining it for his Dark Universe. We take Yoel and I take Ethiopian culture and history and we extrapolate it forward. We build a bridge that doesn't exist right now from the past to the future and say, what if this, and expand upon it, right? For example, similar to the griots in Black Boy Joy, in the sequel to Last Gate of the Emperor, the Royal Trials, coming out this July, we have Asmari engineers. Asmari being similar to griots, they are praise singers, right? And the Asmari engineer in the book, they sing the story of the intended recipient of these devices. That's how they build this technology. They sing it into existence as they talk about the story of this particular person, and they build this customized technology for them. We are using terminology. We are using archetypes and people from our past as we build the future. There's history is a story. It's as simple as that. History is a story. As a story, some people don't tell it right. Yep. Some people do a wonderful job of telling it. I try to find some. I try to fall somewhere in between. Because, like Ms. Bev says, I'm not an expert, but I just try to take what people have taught me and put it into the book so that there's seeds. I'm not trying to beat you over the head with a textbook. I'm trying to sprinkle some seeds, throughout your literature. And as you read them and as you internalize them, and then you leave the book and you move forward into life, those seeds sprout at some point. It could be 20 years in the future. It could be 2 days from now. Those seeds sprout and you're like, wait a minute, I saw this in a book. I saw this. I read this. Mm-hmm. This is real. Let me make that connection on my own because that connection is solidified when I do it. If you tell me to learn about this, shaky. Right. But if I go off on my own to research more about this, that's when the roots really spread and take hold. Yeah. That's all I'm trying to do.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And amen to everything that everyone's already said. For me, I've always loved history. I grew up in a town that was about 95% white. And it was amazing because I still found that the white only history that we learned to still be extremely interesting. But I found myself wondering, like, okay, well, where were the black? What were the black people doing at this time? Where were they? You know what I mean? And like you said, Beverly, like we have 1865, we're free, and then 1965, or I guess I'll give them Brown versus Board of Ed. Okay, I'll give them that. 1955, we have 90 years, 100 years of just nothing. And I'm just like, okay, y'all not gonna do this. So my thing was magic and amusement parks. As a child, I loved amusement parks so much. My mom wouldn't even be able to tell me that we were going to an amusement park because I would worry her half to death. So she would just stop and she would just not even tell me. It would just have to be a surprise. So as a kid, loved amusement parks. Even as an adult, I love amusement parks. And so magicians also started to creep in. Do you all remember the video Say with Michael Jackson and Paul McCartney?
Yeah.
All right. In that video, they're like kind of this traveling vaudeville group, right? And they're like at the beginning, there's like this medicine show. It's just extremely funny. It's hilarious, and I was obsessed with Michael Jackson in the '80s, like most people. And then I said to myself, I said, okay, I really, really love this. Where are the black folks who were doing this? So I started to go and do some research. I found Richard Potter. All right. Richard Potter was the first celebrity in American
Right.
history, and he was black.
Yeah.
And I'm like, why wouldn't I know this? Why is this something that's hidden? Then I dig, and I find Black Herman. And Black Herman was not only probably the most successful black magician of the 20th century, but he was also a follower of Marcus Garvey. So he
Yeah.
interjected, black nationalism into his magic acts in the early 1900s. Early 1900s, early 20th century. So then I'm digging a little bit more and I find these amusement parks that were black owned
Right.
during the 1920s.
Yeah.
And I was employed by DC government for several years. And I would always go by Nanny Helen Burroughs um, in Northeast DC on my way to work. So I'm digging, and I find this amusement park called Suburban Gardens that was built, owned, operated by Black people in the 1920s. And I said, oh my God, what if a Black magician built an amusement park, and inside of this amusement park is a safari of mythological African creatures and African inspired amusement rides, and it's called the Motherland, and it's funded by Marcus Garvey. And that's how I got Dr. Marvelous Jim's Odd Scholars. And that's also how I ended up getting Fangs, Feathers, and Folklore, which is forthcoming from Algonquin in 2023. And it is a bestiary of African mythological creatures. So all of this history and all of this study of folklore, of Black magicians, and of just the landscape during Jim Crow is really what's built my work. And I also have to give a lot of credit to Milton because when I read the Steampunk anthology, I'm telling you, it just blew me away. Those stories were so rich, so amazing. And again, they took place at a time that I've been obsessed with for quite some time, probably for at least the last 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think people don't know that everything that was in the white culture we had.
Yep.
We had circuses, we had riverboats. We had all, the only thing we didn't have was the Ku Klux Klan, and we didn't need that. But everything else, I know y'all can't take me nowhere.
No, I was thinking everywhere. No.
I mean,
Yeah.
everything that you can think that white culture had, we had. It's just been lost and buried or tossed aside.
Right.
And what we're doing as Black writers, regardless of the genre that we're working in, is we're stitching that history back into the quilt. So kudos, everybody. Kudos.
Yes.
And we
Agreed.
had to have it, because we weren't allowed to go anywhere else.
Right.
So we had to make it for ourselves.
Right.
And ironically, when we look back, I think to myself and I say, "Oh my God, my mother was a kid and she talks about Chicken Bone Beach in Atlantic City, New Jersey, where my family is from, and that was the black beach in New Jersey in the
Mm-hmm.
1940s and 50s."
Mm-hmm.
My
Yeah.
mother integrated my high school cheerleading squad. My
Yeah.
mom was a part of the Greensboro sit-ins. Not my grandmama, not my great grandma, my mom.
Yeah.
So we're not even that far removed from all of this at all.
Yeah. I
Exactly.
mean, I remember when you could go to, I'll be 71 on Tuesday. You could go to Sears in Detroit, buy a pair of shoes. You could only try on one pair. And if it didn't fit too bad, you done bought them.
Mm.
When you got your Easter hat for Sunday, you go into Sears, you could not put that hat on your head. You had to hold that hat up like this. Yeah. And the white saleswoman walking behind you to make sure you didn't, you know, get that grease on that hat. My lifetime.
Yep. Yep.
It's not that far away. So
Yeah,
yeah.
what I liked about when I was reading Sharice's manuscript for Dr. Jen, I'm all about. I mean, we did the steam funk and the diesel funk anthology, and the whole purpose was to take a look at those particular genres and put a Afrocentric light on them. And the stories include people, and a lot of it is about alternate history, and that's something I never saw a lot of in fiction about alternate history from an African diaspora perspective.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what steampunk allowed us to do. And what really fascinated me with Sharice's book was, I mean, I love the whole concept. I got educated, learning about the Black amusement park, but I really like the fact that she put Marcus Garvey in there, because I always said, "Where's Marcus Garvey? Why aren't we talking more about Marcus Garvey?"
Mm-hmm.
And when I saw that, I was sold, and I thought, okay. I'm saying that we talking about it, just like Beverly's talking about. I found myself recently leaning more toward historical fiction that's dealing with that time during Reconstruction,
Mm-hmm.
and talking about this too, because like she says, there's not a lot of talk about that. You don't see a lot about what Black people are going. You
Right.
imagine how optimistic Black people were at the end of
Oh,
the
I
Civil War.
know.
You had Black senators and stuff. That's why you
I
down south you hear
know.
them say this is the first Black senator since Reconstruction.
Right.
And a
Right.
lot of us don't even ask questions about, okay, what happened during Reconstruction while we had these Black senators and
Yeah.
representatives coming from the South. And
Yeah.
we really haven't explored that.
Right.
And
Hey,
so,
Sipping romance.
Milton, man, I'm gonna need you to kind of tone it down, so because you giving away story ideas now,
Yeah.
man. You giving away good prime story. Like
Yeah.
I feel like there's a whole
There's a whole century.
unexplored
Yeah.
movies, TV shows,
Yeah.
fiction, novels about that period of the rise and fall of that brief. I don't want to call it utopia, but that brief. The
Yeah.
future is ours. You know what I mean? From the end of the Civil War to the start of the redemption period. The end,
Yeah.
the fall of Reconstruction.
Yeah.
There is so much unexplored history there that is. I mean, just I find it fascinating to read about things that happened then, immediately after the fall of slavery. That now, like Milton said, the first Black senator since Reconstruction, things that we would think of now would be impossible to happen either through gerrymandering or whatever,
Right.
happened and
Yeah.
happened frequently at
Yeah.
that period. It's just fascinating to read
and,
about.
and Beverly's done it. I mean, she's there. It's almost like she's there running this race and looking around, saying, "Where the rest of y'all at?"
Yeah.
She's laughing at she's laughing at
And it's making me crazy, this critical race theory thing, because and this is mainly going on with these red states, whatever. There would not be public education if it had not been for the freedmen.
Exactly.
There was no publication before the Civil War. White people
Mm-hmm.
didn't go to school. The only people that got to school was rich white people.
Mm-hmm.
Black people after slavery, 3 things they wanted to do: keep their families from being sold, educate their children, and work without having the fear of being killed or lashed.
Mm-hmm.
So they started all these schools. Black people started public education in the
Yep.
South.
Yep.
Oh, It's exhausting.
We could be on this one for a minute.
Oh yeah, we could be here for 2 days, like I said. So
I
I'm gonna
think
just
this
hush up. So I'm
yeah,
just gonna sit
no,
on
I
my
like
hands.
this. The one thing I would offer is a publisher recently introduced me to Pauline Hopkins,